Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and today I am going to be talking about Sweet Tooth Season 1, Episode 1. It's called Out of the Deep Woods. So I will start spoiler free, given that it is an Episode 1, and this is based on the comic book by Jeff Lemire, which I have read. It's rare I feel like I come into these big adaptations having read the source material, but I did read all of the original Sweet Tooth comic a number of years ago. Now, admittedly, I have forgotten a lot of it, so like as things are happening, I'm kind of going, oh yeah, of course, but I'm not necessarily remembering what's about to happen, or beyond some very broad strokes and stuff like that. But I did read it a number of years ago. They did come back. There's like a sequel series happening right now in the comics, but this is based on the Sweet Tooth comic book from Jeff Lemire, who's a writer I really like. And this is a post-apocalyptic story, but it's a little bit different in tone to a lot of the post-apocalyptic stories. This is not Last of Us, this is not The Road, even though you could probably draw comparisons to both of those things in some ways, but its tone, the way it's presented, and the comic book at least, has got a very kind of almost childlike optimism, and it kind of comes, the idea of, obviously it's called Sweet Tooth for other reasons, but there's kind of that double meaning where there was a sweetness to the story despite how dark it potentially could get, and the things that it maybe hints at that some of the people in the world are doing, and the humanity's broken down and stuff like that. So there is a virus that is set off. The basic premise: there's a virus that kills off a lot of the human race, which admittedly is not a subject that we're all in the mood for right now, but luckily it's not like going to be too focused on, I don't think, given that the other part of it is that at the same time as this, there are children who are born who are referred to as hybrids, who have animal-like features or qualities, and of course the titular Sweet Tooth, who's also called Gus. His name is Gus. He has antlers, he has ears as well, that correspond to a deer, and I think, as far as my general opinion of this first episode, I would say that the two things that are really strong about it, right? Because I do think it's a good episode. I do see a lot of potential as not in this just as a show, but as a good adaptation of the source material. Because I may not remember a lot of the details of where things go, but I do remember how it made me feel and the overall tone of the narration. And there is the unseen narrator in this episode. There is that voice, who I think is James Brolin, going by the credits here, and it definitely gives it that kind of story time kind of feel, which I think is a big part of the book. So they've kind of accomplished that. So achieving the tone and the feeling of the book is there. And I would also say the other thing that it had to absolutely nail was make Gus, aka Sweet Tooth, it had to make him, well, sweet. It had to make him likable. It had to make him charming. It had to make us want to follow and root for this kid, and kind of find endearing qualities in his optimism, in his almost ignorance, maybe too strong a word, but his how naive he is. There's a lot of qualities with him that could become annoying, but it handles it very well throughout the episode. This first episode, of course, is him and his father, played by Will Forte, who notably has done a post-apocalyptic TV show before, although a much more comedic one. And this is the story. We get a bit of an origin of the virus at the start, which focuses on this doctor character and his wife who gets sick, and it kind of cuts through that in the timeline, and kind of hints at this father out in the woods, but then eventually reveals after the prologue sequences that he has a hybrid child. And this episode largely revolves around the story of him raising his son in the woods up until about the age of 9 or 10. So that is the premise of this. And I don't even think it's too much of a spoiler to say that obviously the story is going to progress beyond this. Even if you look at the posters, you can tell that Gus is not with his father in the posters. That is not who the ongoing father figure is going to be. So the story of how that happens, the story of that character's demise, as it were, is very much this first episode and the beginnings of Gus. But this episode, obviously it serves as an introduction to the world, but more importantly it serves as an introduction to Gus. And there's a lot of Gus on his own. There's a lot of Gus figuring out the world and trying to sort of get good at living off the land, and because his father takes him into this place in the forest in a sort of reserve. There's a fence. He's told to never go beyond the fence, and everything they need's in here. They can fish in here, they can grow some food, they can do whatever to survive, but they're living off the land, and that is the life that he intends to have for Gus. But of course, eventually people come by, and eventually there's going to be people who start to notice, and we get these hints of the darker world outside where hybrids aren't treated very well, and that's putting it lightly. So yeah, a lot of setup in this episode, but it never feels overly expository. I think the smart thing that it does is that it does focus so much on Gus and how he sees the world and how he learns things, because his father keeps a lot from him. He doesn't reveal about what happened to his mother. He doesn't reveal what happened to the world. And Gus is dying to know these things. He wants to know this. He's getting more curious. He's getting older, and that stuff is very solid. And I think that's the stuff that it could completely sink the whole thing. If we found the kid annoying, if we didn't find his desire to know these things, if we weren't engaged with that this would really fall apart. But Gus is naturally struggling. I think some of my favorite stuff in the episode is sort of mid to late on, where he's trying to do things on his own and he's not good at it. It's like he was sort of left on his own a little bit too young, and he's not quite learned to do all the things yet, and he gets frustrated, he gets mad, he makes mistakes, and he clearly needs someone. He needs help, he needs a friend, he needs a father figure, he needs whatever. And obviously, this is set up of the story. Obviously there's going to be a happenstance that leads to him having a new character potentially like that, and this episode just kind of leaves it off and okay, this is clearly the potential character, and this is the potential story that we're getting into now. But it's going to be a story on the road, as many post-apocalyptic stories are. We're not going to stay in this forest for the rest of the show, and I think that at the start. You feel that this is not going to be about staying here. This is the start of the journey. This is the start of any story like this. Even a story like Hannah, which was not post-apocalyptic, but the idea that it starts off in the forest and then we're not going to be with her in the forest for all 8 episodes. We're going to be traveling. We're going to be discovering the world. But unlike Hannah, which is a person who's very unique, discovering what the real normal world is like, this is a character who is unique, but is going to discover what a very different world to ours is. And yeah, so I think once they started with the Of Monsters and Men song towards the end, they definitely had me. They definitely grabbed me, and I was into it. So I think credit where credit is due for nailing the feel of the book and the tone so far. Obviously, there's more characters to introduce. There's more things to do in the journey that could, not be as strong. But so far, I think it's actually very solid. And the early buzz that I was seeing before I watched this was very positive. It feels like they have hit the right balance here between all the elements of the story. At least in season 1, going from the early buzz, going from having watched now 1 episode of it. And if you didn't know, this is actually produced by Robert Downey Jr. He was doing some, there's like little interview snippets with him on Twitter, kind of promoting the show. They're trying to use his name to sort of help promote it, which why wouldn't they? He's not in the show, of course. Maybe he will. Maybe there'll be a character for him. Maybe he'll be like a super secret special character towards the end of the story. They can sort of make a big deal about Downey Jr. playing a small part in an episode. But at least for now, he's not on screen as talent. But I think the uniqueness of Sweet Tooth is the dark world. You're taking something like The Road, and I think Sweet Tooth existed before The Road. Well, maybe not before the book, but before the movie. But you take something like that, which is this dire, depressing, the sort of the harsh dread of the world. But the whole idea of Sweet Tooth is you're looking through it this optimistic child's eyes, who is going to get scared, who is going to, all these things. But there is, I hate to use the word sweet, but there is a sweetness to the whole thing. I don't think the title's an accident. It's trying to give you a sense of the tone as well, on top of everything. And even looking here, there's a poster that I'm looking at on the IMDb page for episode 1. It has this simple kind of it's just a silhouette of Sweet Tooth with green cutout art behind him, sort of trees, and it's just a really simple art style. It looks like a children's book, and even Sweet Tooth himself kind of draws very amateur looking children's books and stuff as he's as a pastime, as something he does. So yeah, I recommend it. So I guess I'll get into some of the more spoilery stuff for episode 1. So yeah, Will Forte is the father, who of course, so full spoilers here, make that clear. But he, of course, eventually dies. Eventually, there's a stranger at the edge of the gate, and Will Forte sort of realizes like halfway through the episode that he shouldn't be lighting fires during the day because the smoke is very visible from a great distance. So they stop doing that, and that's actually the mistake that Sweet Tooth makes later in the episode. Is he ends up getting frustrated and just setting fire to a bunch of stuff. Now, he's not doing it for a practical reason. He's doing it more out of frustration. But that fire is what attracts the other characters, including Tommy, who I don't think we have a name for by the end of this episode. But the new father figure character who's clearly going to be there for him, as well as some dangerous individuals who try to kidnap him. And because this is the thing, we hear about people being hunted, we hear about hybrids being hunted and mounted on walls, and these two thugs that come to get him towards the end of the episode, they talk about taking him to a lab or taking him somewhere else where it'll be more valuable. Clearly there are research places who are willing to pay for hybrids so they can experiment on them and maybe possibly use them to like cure the virus. The virus and the hybrids seem to come at the same time, so there's a lot of speculation as to which one caused the other. Are they linked in some way? It seems like they probably are, but in what way are they linked? Obviously, this is all mythology stuff. This is all stuff that's setting up for the story ongoing. But yeah, as with a lot of episode 1s, the story is very straightforward because it is this story of this young boy learning about the world, wanting to know answers, his father not really wanting to give them. It's very adorable when he sees a deer for the first time and he thinks that might be his mother. It's very sad. The word sweet is going to be used a lot, but so is the phrase bittersweet. Bittersweet is also another word to describe a lot of this. And even in the end, when he gets the key for this lockbox that his father had some of his belongings in, and there's no greater visual imagery to kind of like show how much the world has changed when this young boy picks up some cash, looks at it, doesn't know what it is because he's never seen money before, and just throws it away. So wonderful visual, just sort of imagery to kind of explain the world we're in a lot of ways. But there's a photo of his mother. It's the first time he sees his mother after his father has died, after a fight to protect his son and protect the secrecy of the home. And he's clearly not much of a fighter because he just grabs like a broom and pretends that it's a gun to try and scare someone off. He's clearly not that combat ready or has that much experience. And so Sweet Tooth finds this photo of his mother. It says Colorado on it. So he takes that to mean she's in Colorado. And honestly, like, you immediately think he's wrong, right? She's probably dead. She probably got sick and died from the thing. Now, I don't remember from the book. I want to make this clear. I read the comic book. I don't remember exactly what this leads to. So my speculation here is purely just what I'm getting from the show. I have forgotten so much of that book that I can't. I remember some key moments and like sort of other characters from later on. I don't remember specifics about anything else. So I remember how relationships made me feel. I remember about things like that. But I don't recall where this is going. But yeah, I think from this episode you get that this is probably fruitless. He probably doesn't. He's not really going to find what he's looking for. But I'm sure lessons will be learned along the way. But yeah, so he's actually trapped. He gets tricked with candy bars. He's this is where he gets the name Sweet Tooth. Is Tommy after he saves him because he was being lured with chocolate bars that were on the ground, but he's clearly never had one before because he kind of sniffs at it and he sort of like he's like, oh, this is good, and then he tries to get another one which gets pulled with a string, and that leads to getting almost kidnapped. Tommy comes in to help him, and when Tommy comes to see him, and it's again very good stuff because it sets up early on where he hides in the cabin when there's possibly other people. He hides under the stairs. There's a whole system. He's even built like a scarecrow that'll be up at the window. It's not very effective, but he's tried to plan for dangers on his own. And he so when Tommy comes to the house and everyone is surprised that he can speak. That's one of the key plot details of this first episode, is that clearly other hybrids haven't been taught to speak, or maybe just can't learn to speak. Maybe they just physically can, but Gus can, and that's a big deal. And there's a lot of little things here, like Gus was trying to fix the pipes. You know, his father had set up a system, like, you know, just a simple system to get water to the house, and he was trying to fix the pipes earlier on and failing miserably with like mud or something. And you know, Tommy, you know, breaks out some duct tape and does it very quickly, kind of just as a kindness before he leaves. And he gives him some advice about the crops. He gives him some advice about using the scarecrow properly. Very quickly, he just fixes things that Gus wasn't able to do, and it's just again a nice visual thing to show that he can be this father figure, he can be this friend, this helper. And I said earlier, you know, once you get Of Monsters and Men playing, because you know he makes this choice that he does want, because he was trying to leave before, he was trying to go beyond the fence to go and find his mother, and immediately, you know, gets into trouble, and he makes this choice again to go. He's decided that he's recognized a kindness in this character, in Tommy, and he tries to chase after him. After he's had like a head start, you know, he's like hours ahead, if not a day ahead, and he's able to track him. And we have him running through the hills, running through the fields, or you know, getting to a highway somewhere. And you know, we have and admittedly, I'm a little biased because I happen to like the song anyway, but it fits the mood perfectly. It kind of fits this optimism perfectly. And the episode ends with him just saying, you know, take me with you, effectively. And that's our final beat. It very much is a prologue to the rest of the story. It's very important. Now, this is not me saying that it's not important to the story, but it is very much... The real story starts with them together, next episode, in many ways. This is the setup episode of explaining who Gus is, making us care about him, giving us the hints that this guy, while flawed, you know, I expect Tommy, we're going to, you know, learn about his flawed past. We're going to, he even calls himself an asshole, but he's not heartless. And that reluctant father figure, you know, is very Last of Us in many ways. But again, this is a very different tone. It's doing very different things. And yeah, so yeah, obviously, I'm on board. The show is... It's very pretty so far, I think. I think it looks good so far. Particularly once it got to the, you know, all the big crane shots and aerial shots of him running through the fields and things like that. It does have of an energy. It didn't feel like some Netflix shows do. In fact, to be honest, at this point, it's probably fair to say the majority of Netflix shows do, which is just tons and tons and tons of exposition and dialogue and just like padding. I never felt anything in this episode was padded. In fact, I'm happy to say that this episode is actually one of the longer episodes at the 50 or so minute mark. A lot of the ones after this are more about 40, and that really reassures me, because it feels like one of the problems of Netflix is stretching out the runtime, stretching out the episode count. This is 8 episodes, which seem to be mostly tighter in length, and I'm actually very happy about that. I think it'll fit the tone better. I'm excited about seeing the friendship grow between these two characters. And I guess we're going to see more of the Doctor character from the start of the episode as well, who's trying to save his wife. You know, the last we see of him is when he kind of like sees hybrids for the first time. So I suspect we'll get more of that in some capacity as we go forward as well. And like I said, there's characters still to meet, so I'm curious to see what we do going forward now. But there's a lot of it's a lot of the little things. It's the little visual things that the episode does to show that, you know, Tommy can be a friend, or show that Gus is learning but is incapable of doing things. And these I think these personal character things are probably much better than the world building of what the world is like now. That's still effective, but it's kind of, I don't know, do I say tropey, but you know, we've all seen, you know, movies and TV shows where they hint that the greater world is screwed and it's really bad out there and it's violent and it's desperate and there's no law and it's chaos and anarchy and blah blah blah. I think we've all heard that a million times at this point. So it's perfectly fine here. There's nothing wrong with how they do it, but it's not super exciting on its own. You know, we've had enough of post-apocalyptic stories that I think Sweet Tooth's tone and the lens of which it views this new world is going to be its greatest asset. And the fact that it does focus around this child character who is very, very different protagonist to what most of these are. Because even something like A Last of Us the kid character of Ellie is full mouthed. She's smart. She's 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 a great character, but she's very different. And I think this show will do nothing but benefit from focusing on what makes it unique versus the other post-apocalyptic types of stories. Because there's a lot of comparisons that can be made in other ways, but its tone and its protagonist are definitely not it. And the more it leans into that, and it leans into the heart of it, because I can enjoy a dark, cynical, depressing, post-apocalyptic story, but we've had enough good ones of those, and I think this is maybe a little bit more, maybe even a bit more suited to the time that we're in. That post-pandemic, we can have a happy existence in a weird way. Maybe this show is the right hopeful kind of tone that we want right now, and is good for us. It's very good. I'm curious to see what the rest of the episodes bring. So I will try working through these as quickly as I can. And I don't know how quickly that'll be. I still have Handmaid's Tale to work through that I'm catching up on, and I've got other shows to check out. And I also just get like a year of Apple TV Plus because it came free with an Apple TV. So so maybe I'll try something on there as well. But it's nice to have some TV to work through, and hopefully everyone else is digging the first episode as well. So I think we'll get obviously more specific with plot stuff as per usual as we got into deeper episodes and we're dealing with the minutia of it a little bit more. But solid first chapter. So let me know what you think of episode 1 of Sweet Tooth in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. It helps out a lot if you do that. You can get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates as well. Of course, if you want to support us with some monies, you can do that over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv for as little as $1 per month and keep all the content coming. But like I say, liking, subscribing, commenting, all these things on YouTube are completely free and do help us out a lot. As every YouTube channel ever will tell you it does, because it does. So that's me. Thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?